Shalom and welcome to TGC. We are back again with the Islamic Englishman. We will undoubtedly show that this Islamic Englishman does not know nor understand the law of adultery given by the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. In reality, just spreading false claims and lies. Listen carefully to what this Christian has to say about this story regarding Muhammad. Then listen carefully what this Islamic Englishman responds with regarding Jesus. This Islamic Englishman even goes as far as to claim Jesus disobeyed God. He is basically saying Jesus sinned. So the clip is from a video by SF Dawah. This is the Islamic Englishman here. And this video was 5 months ago. So let's listen to the claims.
When he says to Peter on a different occasion to put away your sword, and he says, "He who is well without sin, cast the first stone." If you go to some of your hadiths, there's one, for example, when a lady approaches Muhammad and says to Muhammad, "I have had intercourse out of wedlock." Muhammad says to go away. He shows her mercy. He says, "Go away and pray for your own sins." She comes back.
Give birth to the child.
She gives birth to the child, and she says, "Muhammad." No, first she tells him she's pregnant.
But he says, "Go away." I can't let you talk for too long, so I will have to cut you off.
I'll be 2 minutes. She comes back with the child, and she says, "Okay, so now here's the child." So what Muhammad says is, he said, "Okay, take the child away, give it to another person," and they dig a grave up to her chest, and he commands that she is stoned to death. Now, it's the same as the Old Testament. I don't agree with it. Okay. It's immoral.
Let me just ask a couple of points.
Yeah.
According to the New Testament, Jesus fulfilled all the law, yes, to become a sinless sacrifice.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so.
So when, according to the Gospel of John, according to what you mentioned, when Jesus said, "Let the one without sin cast the first stone," if that really happened, isn't it a moral obligation upon Jesus to stone the woman?
I don't believe his intention. I think the teaching.
Let the one without sin cast the first stone, because it's a command of God.
I don't think. I think that's the whole point, is that he wanted to abolish that law, and so by not involving himself into that situation.
That's one thing. Yeah. So here, Jesus, when he said, "Let the one without sin cast the first stone," he himself disobeyed God, because the law of God, the law of Moses,
God, so he came to abolish the law.
Okay, no, but he came as a man, and
he came to change his law.
But he disobeyed God. That's one. Second,
he can't disobey himself.
Second, if that was God's condition, that only the punishment can be carried out by the one without sin, that would abolish the whole law of Moses, because all mankind is sinful according to you.
So the Ten Commandments were
so God gave a law that could never be fulfilled, which is.
I don't think necessarily his law needs to be fulfilled. So why does he law?
Okay. Listen. You're saying that God is commanding something, but no one's able to fulfill it. But that's a side point.
Yeah.
But the main point to understand is, according to biblical scholarship, critical biblical scholarship, this story of "let the one without sin cast the first stone," it doesn't appear in any manuscript until the 10th century.
Yeah, so
biblical scholars say this is not from Jesus.
Yeah.
This is not from Jesus.
I'm not sure about that one. Which scholars say this? Sorry.
Many. Look it up. I don't have the quotes now. What they say is,
you being able to quote me,
what they say is a story which was possibly in the margins or in a commentary, and someone later on in the 10th century they wrote it as part of the story, but it's not in the original Gospel of John.
I didn't hear this before, and without being able to back your statement.
Okay, we heard all the claims. Now, let's get to the truth. We will look at this woman who was caught in adultery. Now, it's very important that you understand what is written here. John 8, verse 1. But Jesus went to the Mount of Olives. Now, early in the morning, he came again into the temple, and all the people came to him, and he sat down and taught them. Then the scribes and the Pharisees brought to him a woman caught in adultery. And when they had set her in the midst, they said to him, Jesus, teacher, this woman was caught in adultery. And this is very important. In the very act. She was caught in the act of adultery. Now, Moses in the law commanded us that such should be stoned. But what do you say? This they said, testing him. They were testing Messiah, that they might find something of which to accuse him. But Jesus stooped down and wrote on the ground with his finger. So, on a side note, what was he writing on the ground? As though he did not hear. So, when they continued asking him, he raised himself up and said to them, he who is without sin among you, let him throw a stone at her first. And again, he stooped down and wrote on the ground. When those who heard it, being convicted by their conscience, went out one by one, beginning with the oldest even to the last. And Jesus was left alone, and the woman standing in the midst. When Jesus had raised himself up and saw no one but the woman, very important. He said to her, woman, where are those accusers of yours? Has no one condemned you? She said, no one, Lord. And Jesus said to her, neither do I condemn you. Go and sin no more. Then Jesus spoke to them again, saying, I am the light of the world. He who follows me shall not walk in darkness, but have the light of life. So, is this Islamic Englishman correct? Did Jesus disobey the law of Moses for not stoning the woman who was brought alone, who was caught in the very act? Well, let's see what that law states. Leviticus 20, verse 10. This is the law of adultery. The man who commits adultery with another man's wife, he who commits adultery with his neighbor's wife, the adulterer, the man, and the adulteress, the woman, shall surely be put to death. So, if the woman was caught in the very act, they would have also caught the man in the very act. And if they knew the law of adultery, they would have brought both the woman and the man, because the law of adultery tells you the adulterer and the adulteress shall surely be put to death. So why did they only bring the woman? Now, on the side note, what was Jesus writing on the ground? Jeremiah 17. We'll start at verse 12. A glorious high throne from the beginning is the place of our sanctuary. O Lord, the hope of Israel. All who forsake you shall be ashamed. Those who depart from me shall be written in the earth, because they have forsaken the Lord, the fountain of living waters. So I would submit to you, because they were being deceitful and not following the law of adultery, they tried to trick him and set him up to find something against him. And knowing what we just read here in Jeremiah 17, I say we can logically and reasonably know what he was writing on the ground. So let us go back to this Islamic Englishman and his claims. Firstly, we as Christians, we are not held to scholars. Scholars, as we know, are not infallible. Secondly, Jesus did not disobey God. Jesus did not sin. As being the lawgiver in the Old Testament, he knew that both the man and woman was to be put to death. Yet they only brought to him the woman, whom they claim was caught in adultery in the very act. Therefore, they would have also caught the man in adultery, the man in the very act. Yet they did not bring the man, only the woman. Thirdly, if that was God's condition, that the punishment only can be carried out by one without sin, that would abolish the entire law of Moses. This is false, because the man was not brought forth with the woman. It's a false claim. By not thoroughly understanding God's law, nor thoroughly following God's law, as we just witnessed by this Islamic Englishman. So, this leaves us where? What did we just find out? Who is really truthful, Jesus or Muhammad? Did Muhammad follow the law of the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob? Especially concerning the law of adultery, as we heard this story from this Christian about the woman being stoned, but not the man. We must ask ourselves, who are the seeds of light, of life, and who are the seeds of darkness, of death? Because, as we know, a seed can and will only bear of its own kind. If you plant a seed from an orange, that seed will only bear oranges. Did Jesus really break the law of God, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob? Absolutely not. As the law of adultery commanded both the man and woman to be stoned, Jesus fulfilled the righteousness requirement of the law, which is what the purpose of the Torah was. Did Muhammad fulfill any such thing? Of course not. The righteous requirement of the law was love, which is completely the opposite of what Muhammad performed and what he preached. Muhammad was slaughtering people, having the murdered heads detached and annihilated, having the men wiped out, the women taken as captives, Doesn't really seem like Muhammad fulfilled the righteousness requirement of the law to me. Did Muhammad break the law of the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob? Yes, he did. Seems to me Muhammad did not he did not even understand the law of adultery given by the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Just as we have just witnessed by his fruit, this Islamic Englishman, as both the man and the woman was to be stoned. To paraphrase, what was Muhammad known for? What is Muhammad universally known for? Being a warlord. And what is Jesus universally known for being? The God of love. I mean, come on. I shall end this video by asking a two-part question. And anyone feel free to answer this two-part question in the comments section. Have you ever seen a video of an Islamic woman being stoned or whipped for adultery? Have you ever seen a video of an Islamic man being stoned or whipped for adultery? There you have it. You decide. You make the call. Was this Islamic Englishman being truthful in his claims? Or was his claims out of ignorance, just as he is the fruit of his seed, Muhammad? I thank you for listening. Please share far and wide so all mankind can know the truth of the one true God, of the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. May he comfort you and bless you. Shalom.